Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest video in the Bye Bye Windows, Hello Linux. Today we're going to look at the best Linux for Windows 7 users. Now, before we actually start, I must say that if you asked 10 different Linux users which is the best, you'd get 10 different answers. But I'm going to explain why I think we should use these particular ones and the assumptions that I've made when making this video. So the assumptions are: you want something similar to what you're used to. So you want something that has a sort of general look and feel similar to Windows 7. That's quite important. You don't want too much of a change to what you have. You are a normal user. You might have visited Control Panel a few times. You're not a power user, you're not a super user, you're not a computer nerd, you're not a geek. You just use the computer to do things in your life. Okay? You want something which will allow you to write letters, make and use spreadsheets, possibly do PowerPoint type presentations, basic office type of work, that type of thing. You want to be able to send and receive emails and surf the web, and you want to be able to use the normal internet browsers, that type of thing. You use multimedia. You want to be able to watch videos or listen to audio or even create videos and create audio if you so wish. You have photo albums and you keep your photos on the computer, and possibly you need image editing, that type of thing. So yes, you need to be relatively secure as computers can be, without having to worry too much about security things and processes. You want something that can be used by all the family. So, you know, your computer may well have 3 or 4 different users on there, and they all have different things, different programs, different things that they use on their user. You don't want any complexity, so it's not to be difficult to use. You don't want to have to be able to learn how to program or how to go into terminal or whatever. You don't want that. You want to be able to use this more or less straight out of the box, do a little bit of work to set it up for your particular liking, which you did with Windows, and then just do your work. There's one thing I need to stress though, that in Linux you can play games. There are a lot of games available in Linux, and a lot of the Windows games are available in Linux, but not all the games are available for Linux. So you may find that some of the games that you use might not work in Linux, but most will work. Okay, let's have a look at the best Linux for Windows 7 users. So we've just gone over who this video is for. It's for people who don't want complexity. They're using Windows 7. They don't want to go on to Windows 10 or something like that, and they want something that will work on their computer. Okay, so we will install and look at, and we've actually installed previously, the top 3 distributions based on DistroWatch in the last 6 months, and these all have the same desktop, the XFCE desktop. In theory they should be all the same. In practice they're not actually all the same, but we will have a look at those. The first one is Manjaro Linux, and you can have a look at the installation of Manjaro Linux. I'll put a link up at the top for you. The next one is MX Linux, and again I'll put a link up at the top so that you can actually have a look at the installation of MX Linux. Then we use the Mint with the XFCE desktop, and again I'll put a link at the top for you so you can have a look at that. And we'll talk about the ease of installation of each of these products, how easy, how much technical knowledge do you need to actually install them. Ease of use and similarity to Windows 7. How close to Windows 7? What do you have to relearn? What do you have to change? Any Linux that you get, it's like changing models of cars or even makes of cars. Say that you normally drive a Ford, or that's what you drive, and you know where all the controls are, you know how the radio and the entertainment system and the GPS works, you know where everything is. And then you buy a Mercedes, and you suddenly find that things, yes, it's a car, yes, it drives just like the Ford, well, similarly, but things are not exactly the same. They're in different places. They do things slightly differently, and this is the same thing for the change between, say, Windows and Linux. Yes, you can do work on Office, you can do your emails, you can surf the web, you can play games, but things are not necessarily exactly the same, and so there is a little bit of change there. The next one is what software comes with it. Now, most of the Linux distributions actually come with an enormous amount of software packaged with it. So we don't have to worry about this. And in fact, one of the most important things about Linux is it's a very good idea not to download software from websites unless you 100% trust the website. So it's much better to install the packaged software that comes with Linux, because it's much safer. It's been checked for viruses and nasties and things like that, and so you're not going to put your computer at risk. Okay, we have a bonus installation for you, so we'll actually look at a fourth installation at the end, and finally it's my recommendations. Now notice this is my recommendations, my ideas. You ask 100 Linux users which is the best Linux, you'll get 100 different answers. Okay, let's have a look at the different Linuxes. So first of all, we need to sign in. So this one here is the Manjaro Linux. Okay, and we saw the installation. The system might take a moment or two to actually start running, because I'm running 4 virtual machines on the same computer. Right, so here we have Manjaro, and we'll have to just wait for the screen to resize on that. Now, Manjaro's ease of installation is very good. Now, I like the ease of installation on that. It is very good indeed. And let me just change the display. But you can see from here that they haven't really thought about this, because it should have opened in a fuller screen so that the apply button was available. I want 1280 by 960. So there's one or two things here that need polishing that they haven't really thought about. The opening screen, the Welcome to Manjaro, is very good, and it has a lot of information, but I think it could be better, because what you really need is a sort of step-by-step. This is what you need to do. This is the quick way of accessing, these applications, the software that will make you be able to change your setup to suit you. A little bit of a problem here. Oops, we've got a problem with the window size. This is a virtual machine, so consequently don't worry about the fact that it didn't fit the screen correctly. That was a virtual machine problem, not Manjaro's problem. Okay, let's have a look at the first menu. And the menu is a little bit different from Windows, not very different, but it's a little bit different. You have your main areas down the right hand side. You do have an Office with Manjaro, and you do have a choice of offices which you can install as well. Now, you probably noticed I went into this box here, which at the top, which is the all settings. Now, this is where you can think of this like control panel, and it's more or less exactly the same as control panel, where you can actually change certain things, make things different. You can change the appearance, the desktop, all this type of thing. You can change the panel at the bottom here, this type of thing if you wish to do it. So there's all sorts of things that you can do in there. Okay, right, so graphics, we've got different graphics package, GIMP. This is very similar to Photoshop. It's not exactly the same to Photoshop, but it is similar. So if you've used Photoshop, if you do use Photoshop, then you need to use the GIMP image manipulation program. There is some learning to do, just as I explained with the if you're changing cars, things are in different places and they don't necessarily work in exactly the same way. And it's the same with GIMP as to Photoshop. You need to learn its particular ways of working. Okay, Internet. You've got various different parts. They all come with Firefox. They all come with Thunderbird, so all the distributions come with Firefox. And Thunderbird you can think of as an email client like Outlook or Outlook Express, something like that. But a lot of people are now using Hotmail or Live or Gmail, so you'll be using the internet, your email on the internet. Okay, you've got chat programs and that type of thing. Multimedia. Okay, you've got a media player, so this will do video, audio and everything like that. This allows you to control the audio settings and gives you some fine granularity into that. So there's quite a lot of audio in here. In the Office, you can see we've got FreeOffice and LibreOffice. Now, FreeOffice, I would recommend you don't install it. There are some problems with that. And I would recommend that you go for LibreOffice. You can see you've got the panel at the bottom and the taskbar at the bottom. It's fairly similar to the Windows one. You've got the system tray on this side, which shows the running processes and that type of thing. Here it's slightly different in that you've got two desktops available, so you can actually move between desktops as well. So you can actually move between them. You've got the Office programs, other, just for example, HP for printers and that type of thing. You've got the settings, which we looked at very, very briefly with this button here. And then finally, system. This is like system administration, which is one of the items within the control panel in Windows. If you know what you're doing, it's very useful. If you're not sure what you're doing, then it's probably a good idea not to go into here. So, Manjaro Linux, it's relatively easy to install. I'd probably say it's one of the easiest to install. I'm not too sure about the interface. It's a little bit sort of basic, the interface. It's not as nice as it could be. You have a choice of LibreOffice or FreeOffice on the installation. Always take LibreOffice. There's a problem with FreeOffice on that. So the icons are a little bit basic and that type of thing. Okay, let's have a look at MX Office. So we'll shut down Manjaro, and as you can see, it's a bit geeky as it shuts down. You get all sorts of information. But while that's going, let's have a look at MX Office. Now, MX Office's interface is a little bit more slick. As you can see, it's much nicer. You've got a sort of rounded corners. It's sharper. It's in general it's better than Manjaro from a visual point of view. The welcome screen is very good because although it doesn't actually say it, this here, the tweak and the tools, is where you can actually set up the systems so it's suitable for you, and you can change your systems on here. You've got popular applications, so you can add things that you might want to use and so on right off the main screen, which is very good on here. The icon for the updates is a green box, whereas on virtually all the other Linux it's a shield. The other thing is, if you're a bit geeky, you've got this piece of information here which tells you how much of your system you're using, and it also gives the time and date. But let's have a look at the menu. Okay, so the menu is a little bit more like Windows, I would say, with the white, but you still have the black. You've got, again, at the top, which is always part of it, you've got the settings. You can lock the screen, that switch users, that type of thing. So you can have multiple users on all of the computers. So let me just go to all. Okay, so again, you've got mainly the same things, but notice that they've got a section for development, which wasn't on Manjaro. Now this is because MX Linux is much more technical. It's designed for more technical people. So if you are interested in programming and you write software and you're interested in learning a lot more about Linux, then this one is the one for you. If you're not interested and you're just wanting to use an operating system, then this one probably isn't for you, because there's a little bit more involved in using MX Linux. As you can see in games, Steam is not here, but Steam is very easy because you just go into Firefox and type in Steam, and then you can go and download it. You can also install the Steam settings from the popular apps over here. Graphics, again, the same. You've got GIMP, you've got LibreOffice Draw, that type of thing. You've got different scanners so you can scan documents. Internet, as I said before, you've got Firefox and Thunderbird. They come with all of them. HexaChat, I believe, comes with all of them, and so does Transmission, so it's very similar. In multimedia, you've got VLC, you've got XFburn for CDs if people still have them, that type of thing. And you've got some other players and video users, as well as the Pulse audio control. Now you've got MX Tools, and this is where it's much more like it's for programmers and more advanced users and so on. This is why I say it's probably it's better for the more advanced user, because you've got many more tools that you can actually use here, and you can get more into the low level. In Office, you've got LibreOffice, and you've got a couple of other items. The orange calendar, I find, is rather basic. It works. Yes, it does. It works, but it is a bit basic. Settings, we had a look at. As I say, they're basically the same as Control Panel, and System is the same. It's basically the same as Administrator Systems in Control Panel. So MX Linux, I would say yes, if you're interested in learning a lot more about Linux and want the tools about Linux and being able to get into the nitty-gritty and understand terminal and things like that, then yes, you can do that. You've got your Windows here. There's only one workspace set up as okay, whereas in Manjaro you have two set up as standard. Okay, right, let's have a look at oops, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do that. And again, you have all these comments as it shuts down. Do you actually need them? Can you do anything about them? Probably not. You do have a nice screen that sort of tells you how far it's progressing. Okay, so let's have a look at the Linux Mint with the XFCE desktop. Let me just resize this. They were all resized when I started, but of course making them into a smaller size has created a problem. Right, let me have a look. Now, interestingly, when I first did this, this was the right size, but so 1280 by 960, apply, close, view, adjust window size, and bring it back in. Okay, so this is the Linux Mint opening screen. It's very clean. I think this is probably the cleanest of them all. I don't know, to me it just seems much more polished. They've spent a bit more time on the graphics and they've just made them a little bit better. Yes, they're still sort of fairly basic for when you look at, say, the Windows graphics, but I think these are a little bit better. Interestingly, you've got your Welcome to Linux Mint, but what I like is this first steps. And this is really good because you quite literally, if you follow the first steps one after another, then you're going to have your system set up perfectly for you, and it's very easy to do. The defaults are suitable for most people. Yes, what I forgot to tell you is that when you use Linux, you will need to know your administrator password a lot. And of course, if you're the only person with the administrator password, then other people on the system can't make changes, so you know you're a lot safer. They won't be able to install software unless you actually allow them to install software. So provided it's only you with the administrator password, then you can control what people are doing on the system, and therefore it makes it much more secure out of the box. You don't have to worry if they're installing things that they shouldn't do, which is going to corrupt the whole of the computer system, because it can't happen unless you allow it. Right, the setup wizard, again, because it's the first time round, it takes a minute or two. It's counting through all the files to see how big they are and that type of thing. But this is TimeShift is, I believe, available on all the systems, and I would strongly recommend that you set them up. It's the same as System Restore on Windows, and the defaults here are okay, if not a little bit large, but they're suitable for you to use. It's taking a bit of a long time to do, so we'll come back when it's finished doing this. Okay, so when you set up TimeShift, it does take a moment to look through. It asks you which is your disk, and there's only one on here, so that's the one it's selected. And this is what I actually wanted to look at, and it does 5 daily snapshots. Now the snapshots are incremental, so they're not the full system, and they're only the changes that you've made to the system files. You might want to set a weekly and keep 2 weeks, and then keep the 5 days. It's not going to be very much. Okay, so just accept the defaults and keep going. It's going to ask to exclude your data, which is a very good idea, because you should back up your data separately using a backup program, and this is just for System Restore. You've then got next. It's going to finish. I'm actually not going to do it on here because this is just to show you how it works. Driver Manager, it's unlikely, but it's possible that there may be drivers, and again with Linux Mint it actually has recommended drivers and that type of thing. Even if I launch this, it won't be any use because there are no drivers to install. Update Manager, well, this is this shield at the bottom here with the blue. After that, you've got system settings, so you can do things like change the background, change the screen, change icons that appear, this type of thing, change the size of the panel. Software Manager, as you can see, there are about 60,000 applications available. Now this is the same for all 3 Linuxes that we've looked at. Okay, these are available from the computer. You do not have to go and download software from the sites. Now this is the safest way to install software, and again, you do need to have administrator rights to install the software. So although this is available on other users, if they want to install something, then you have to actually give them the right to install it, or be there to install it. So you can see there's a lot here. There's quite a few games. It's very easy to use. You quite literally, you decide, for example, if you want GIMP, which doesn't come normally, okay, you can just click on it and click install, okay, and it will then install. So let's have a look at the menu. The menu is the other way round, so you've got the categories down the left and the items on the right, whereas on the other two it was the other way round. And it's more of a sort of Windows look to it here. You have a bar at the bottom where you can type in, so if you actually know what you're looking for, you can type it in. So there we are, I've just typed in terminal and it will bring it up, but if you... I don't think GIMP is actually on here, no it isn't, but if I type in Libre for example, it'll bring up the LibreOffice and that type of thing. Okay, there's one fewer here because you can lock the computer, okay, and you can log out, and your switch users are on the logout screen here. Okay, let me just remove that. In the programs, accessories, it's the usual accessories, calculator, that type of thing. Graphics, you don't have GIMP, but as you can see here, you can install it very easily. Just click on install and you'll have GIMP. Instead, they've got a more like a Paint. Well, it's more like Paint on steroids. It's an advanced paint drawing tool, which most people will want because GIMP, being Photoshop-like, it is not Photoshop, but it's like Photoshop, is quite an advanced program. Internet, again, you've got Firefox, you've got Thunderbird, Transmission, HexaChat, it's the standard ones. Now in Multimedia you've got a lot less, which is quite surprising, because you've got Celluloid for movies, you've got the Pulse Audio, and you've got Rhythm Box. Now, the reason they've done this is these take up less system resources, so they're faster and they're quicker. But again, if you want to install, for example, VLC, if you just type it in there, just one moment. Okay, so you can just see that the VLC is there. Okay, and you can install it, no problem whatsoever. So it's very easy to do. It's available from your computer. And then finally you've got a firewall. Now if you share computers and you have a number of computers on the network and you talk to each computer and you've got data on computers, provided you're actually behind your router firewall, you probably don't need the firewall. Probably. It's always a good idea to put it on and just to use the home version of the firewall. But if you're sharing Windows files, documents and that type of thing between different computers, then the firewall will need some setup, and you do need much more advanced knowledge of the system. So provided you've got a firewall on your router, which takes you out of the house, then you probably don't need the firewall. It's a good idea, but not always necessary. Okay, let's continue. We were on graphics, internet, multimedia. So multimedia we've done, VLC, Office, so you can see you've got the LibreOffice and a dictionary. The settings, which is control panel, and systems, which are like the administrator settings within control panel. And of course you can configure your printers here as well. Okay, one other thing is in the system tray here you actually have system information, so you get this icon here, and it'll probably tell me that I need, by clicking on it, I need to do some updates and I need to put some languages on. So it just takes a moment to do this. Okay, so you can see it's got it's set two problems. They're not really important ones. You just click it, install, and it will go and install it. Set the root password. It actually gives you what you need to type into terminal. This isn't 100% necessary, but it is useful in case you actually have a problem starting Linux, which is, in my opinion, or in my knowledge, very rare. I haven't had a problem starting Linux. It can happen. Okay, and of course you have system information about your machine, which is very nice if you need to ask for help. Right, okay, so the graphics are a little bit better on this. I think they're a little bit cleaner, they're a little bit sharper. Okay, so we'll now shut down and we will look at the bonus. Linux. Now this again is Linux Mint, but this is Linux Mint with a different desktop. Now you'll probably notice that the icons look a little bit different and the desktop is slightly different. Now to run this desktop, this is the Cinnamon desktop, you'll need probably a 2-core processor and you'll need at least 4 gigabytes of memory, because it takes a little bit more power to run this one, so it needs to have a more powerful computer. So if you've got an older computer, use the XFCE. If you've got a more modern computer, then you can use the Cinnamon desktop. And if we have a look, you can see the menu is a bit different. You actually have some shortcuts down the left hand side, and then you have the categories and the actual items. They are virtually exactly the same as you'll find on the XFCE. There's no real difference here at all, and you can just go and install any programs you want or that you need by using the installation software manager. So you can install VLC, you can install GIMP, that type of thing. And if you know what type of thing that you want, if you want some games, you can just click on games, or we've got the editor's picks up here. I would recommend you don't install Wine, because this is a security problem, and if you install Wine, then you are basically making yourself open to viruses and that type of thing. So it's probably a good idea not to install Wine. Okay, you've got graphics packages, science and education, all that type of thing. And if you know what the package is called, you can just type it in the top here, and it makes life a bit easier for you. Okay, so this is, it uses more system resources, it's a little bit sharper, little bit slicker, and in my mind it's probably, to me it's easier because you've got these shortcuts down the side and that type of thing. It's more or less the same as you'd find with XFCE, very close to it. It's just, as I say, a little bit sharper, a little bit slicker. Okay, so let's have a look. Finally, which one do I recommend? Well, I've done a quick chart for you to have a look at, and we'll discuss that. So first of all, the blue line is the ease of installation, and I found Manjaro to be the easiest and MX Linux to be the hardest. You had to have more knowledge, in-depth knowledge of programming. Mint, it nearly got an 8, but I decided it has to be 1 less than Manjaro, because Manjaro was just slightly easier on the installation. Ease of use, I found Linux Mint to be the easiest to use, followed by Manjaro and then MX Linux. I'm being kind with MX Linux and giving it a 6, because if you're not a systems administrator, a power user, then you'll find MX Linux probably a little bit difficult. But if you just want things to work more or less out of the box, that type of thing, then come to Linux Mint. Software, well, as you can see, I've given Manjaro 6, and this was because of FreeOffice as one of the options, and it didn't work. It just wouldn't work on my system at all, and I have multiple systems and it wouldn't work. But they all come with a software installation system which has, as you saw, about 60,000 programs, so they're all very, very similar on that. Again, I found Mint just slightly easier. So if you total them all up, I found Mint XFCE was the best for Windows 7 users. If you have a more powerful computer, then use the Mint Cinnamon desktop, because that is a little bit slicker. Okay, I hope you found this useful. My name's John. and I'll see you next time.